Hi, my name is Chris Burres. I'm a longevity expert and the chief scientist at a lab focused on a longevity molecule. My primary focus is to help people live longer and better lives with science. Make sure to subscribe and share so you and your friends can live longer and better. Well, actually, so you and your friends can live beyond the norms.
You talk about triggers, and I've heard you say this very powerful thing. If somebody can push your button, like, get rid of the button, right? Talk a little bit about triggers and the importance of being untriggerable.
Well, the quote's a little bit darker than that, but it's if you have triggers and someone can push your buttons, well, that means you're carrying a loaded gun, and it means my finger is on your trigger, right? And adults shouldn't do that. Okay, if you're 10 years old, you haven't learned emotional regulation yet. So what most of us do, including me for the majority of my life, is we learn, okay, my trigger got triggered, but because I've felt consequences, I can now behave myself. So instead of punching the guy or running him off the road or whatever, I'm going to take a deep breath and I'm going to smile and I'm going to pretend, right? And this is why we have civil society and manners. This is good. The problem is it's enormously emotionally and biologically expensive to feel a large feeling, make up a story. It's because that guy's a jerk. And then not do the thing. You're just burning through willpower and energy, literal electrical energy from your cells. And you're telling yourself a story that's completely not reality-based. Because the truth is that other people do things because of them, not because of you. And they don't do them to you. They just do them because they were programmed to do that, usually by mommy and daddy or by some other factors. And they got programmed by the generation before. So we're all running these very simple survival programs. And then we make up rational stories to justify them. And it works. Look at the success of humans as a species. Problem is it creates suffering and misery, and it wastes a lot of energy. So we've all been in a meeting or a situation where someone says something and it's rude. And whatever the target of that comment is, they stiffen up and then they pretend like it didn't hurt them. Okay, remember that from 7th grade? When bully says something really gets you and you pretend like it didn't hurt you? Dude, we're still doing it. Well, there's another kind of person. And the rude person will say something unkind to them. And you realize it didn't land. And it's not because they're, invulnerable. It's because there was nowhere for it to land. And these people feel safe. They feel authentic. And they feel like they're in high integrity because they are. Because they have congruence, which means your inner state and your outer state match. So you're not acting, right?
Yeah.
And the difference there is profound because the person who's not acting, they are in charge of themselves and they can choose what they do. The person who's been triggered is no longer in charge of themselves. They just think they're choosing what they do. This is why narcissists and sociopaths destroy countries, they destroy businesses, they destroy families, because they're operating on that thing where they trigger your emotions and you make up a story to justify your behavior around your emotions. And it's not real. And the idea is if you can't be triggered by those people, you see what they're doing. Like, I'm not going to do that. And they have no power, and you have all the power.
I think a great example, when people are kind of attributing characteristics to you from like, Dave, I hate your purple hair. Well, it can't land, right? Because there's just nothing close. But if I start getting, maybe if the word quirky bothered you and I was like, hey, Dave, you're a little quirky. Like if there's truth to that and you don't like it, then it lands in the wrong place. And if there's truth and you accept it, great. And if there's zero truth, then it doesn't land. And is that a lot of what you're kind of getting people to the right place?
You're being very rational about it. And so what you perceive—
I am prone to that.
Well, what everyone perceives it's by design, is that, information comes in, then I think about it, right? Here's what really happens. And you're not supposed to be able to see this, but we can measure it with neuroscience technology. This is absolutely provable. So I'm going to clap my hands. Took some time for the sound to go to the mic, be converted, go through the internet, come to you, and then reach your ears, and you heard it, right? Well, that's not real. After the sound hit your body and your ears, your mitochondrial networks in your nervous system held on to the sound for 1/3 of a second before it allowed it into your auditory processing system. So there's a 1/3 of a second reality censorship window that all humans have. And cats are 10 times faster. That's why they can move like those incredible things. They have a lower lag time on reality than we do. Well, what's happening during that? Your body's determining via an algorithm how to make you feel. And then you have the remainder of that second is how long it takes to think about it. So it's 1 full second after I clap my hands, you have an awareness, oh, he clapped his hands. And you can't see it, but it's there. And that means, wow, I didn't think about the sound first. I felt about the sound, and then I told myself a story about the sound. And if I had clapped my hands and you had PTSD over hand clapping or something, you'd have had a big emotional response, and you probably would have behaved differently and even felt differently before you could think about it, right? And then blamed yourself. Why am I just, why am I a coward? Why am I afraid of a clap? It's not you. It's your hardware is doing that. And the idea is you have a separate consciousness run by mitochondria, distributed throughout your tissues, that is the frontline interaction with reality. And its job is to sense reality and then make decisions. And what you and I see consciously is a tiny, tiny, tiny fraction of what's actually happening in the world.
So your process is working on making mitochondrial level changes systemically.
Yes. Think about it like this. If you have your phone and all the alerts are enabled, every app that wants to tell you stuff, and you go into the therapist and you're like, Doc, it's beeping and buzzing and all these things. He goes, oh, that's okay. Take a deep breath. Just gently swipe left on every alert and continue focusing on your emails. You'd be like, stop it. Okay, so you go to someone else and he says, well, let's go into the control panel and let's only give you the alerts you want. So since your mitochondrial networks are the things that set the alerts long before they even hit your brain, well, maybe that's where the problem is. And that is where the problem is. Since we are built of ancient bacteria, that is what mitochondria are. There's more of them than there are cells in our body. And they react in very close to real time to the world around us. Let's go there. So what do mitochondria have to be able to do? Sense the environment around them, because single-celled life can do this. Multicellular life can do this. It doesn't matter if it's a tree, if it's a dog, or even like a politician or something. All of them have to follow these rules before thought can happen, even if it doesn't happen. So first rule is fear. If something is scary, run away from, kill, or hide. That's a big one. If you meditate, that takes about 6 times more energy than anything else. Because if something eats you, it's a bad survival strategy. If you don't meditate, in humans, it takes 9 times more energy. So you're always primed for fear. This is why we remember bad things more than good things. The next F word after fear is food. Eat everything. And remember, all life has to do this, and it has to do it automatically, even if your brain's not in there. And your mitochondria hate it that your brain's in there, because you might make them do something that isn't a survival behavior, and that's all they care about. So fear food. Oh, and you got to survive for multiple generations. That's the next F word. You've read the book, so you know what that one is, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
For polite company, it's fertility, but really from a mitochondrial perspective, it's like fucking.
Yeah.
So fear, food, fertility.
Fucking.
Have you ever done anything you're ashamed of that isn't one of those 3 things?
Like nothing would come to the top of my head.
Yeah. I don't know anyone who's ever been able to find something that didn't come from one of those. All of the 7 deadly sins are the first 3 mitochondrial behaviors. All of the Buddhist hindrances are those behaviors. In fact, Heavily Meditated became the #1 best-selling philosophy book and the best-selling meditation book. And Buddhist scholars are now looking at this going, oh my God, that's a scientific explanation for our observations for the past 5,000 years of what our egoic behaviors are. They're mitochondrial survival mechanisms shared by all life on the planet. And that means when you walk in the door, in microseconds, long before you have a chance to even think, your body has effortlessly scanned the room and said, is there anything I need to kill? Is there anything I can eat? And is there anything I can hump? In that order. And only after that is it going to allow it to go to the next F word. And that F word is friend. All life on Earth is designed to support its own life form and the ecosystem around it. That means, this is good news, we're wired in our bones to be kind to other humans, to build tribes, to build families, to support our kids and our older people. Like, all the goodness is community. And the final F word is forgiveness. That's how humans go in and evolve. Other life forms don't really have much in the way of forgiveness, but you can see it in something like a deer. You ever see National Geographic? You know, the mountain lion jumps out, the deer runs away, gets away. It's full of stress hormones. And then what does it do? It shakes its whole body like a Qigong master. It's just dropping all the extra adrenaline, and then it goes back to eating, and it's done, right? And it's not holding on to that. And humans are really terrible at that part of it. We hold on to it forever because we have these brains. So all I'm suggesting in Heavily Meditated is that all the willpower, all the effort, all the shame, all the judgment, it isn't you. It's your mitochondrial network, and you didn't program it. It was programmed starting the moment of conception moving forward by your environment, by the way you were raised, by the way you were parented, by your teachers, by your coaches, by the mean bullies, by negative experiences. And because it has 6 to 9 times more avoidance of pain than seeking of pleasure or awe or gratitude, you can do the "my mind is empty" meditations, and there's value to those. Or you can do the "I'm going to go in there and I'm going to teach my stupid ass mitochondrial network to not be afraid of things like criticism, to not be afraid of doing the right thing. I'm going to teach myself to have a native state that is the opposite of fear." And Chris, what do you think that is?
The opposite of fear.
Yeah.
I don't know, joy.
And I've asked big crowds, like thousands of people, to talk about this, and you hear so many things. Usually people say love, sometimes joy, happiness. It's actually peace is the opposite of fear.
Peace, yeah.
And from peace, joy and love and all the good stuff can emerge. So if you can teach your mitochondrial network to not be triggered unless there's a real tiger in front of you, the amount of free energy that puts into your life so you can do the other F words just goes up so much. And then we get to food. 1/3 of the average person's thoughts every day is about tacos.
How did you know?
Okay. Or Twinkies or whatever your thing is. But literally, until you teach your body, you're not going to die for 60 or more days if you don't eat. So stop whining about it. It's called fasting. You can do it. Then it creates a lot more free energy. So I was like, I guess I'm not going to starve. And I guess I'm really not in danger. Oh, maybe you can turn porn and lust and loneliness into a sacred form of connection that's really nourishing. And for adults, having a love life is fundamental to longevity.
Yeah.
There are monks and nuns who practice celibacy, but at least in the nun world, they might be celibate, but that doesn't mean that they aren't managing their reproductive organs from an energetic, from a chi perspective. This is Montauk Chia's work and the whole realm of Tantra and some of the advanced Eastern longevity practices. Libido is life force, is chi. So when your libido goes, you are not where you want to be if you want to live a very long time. And if you want to make something meaningful happen in the world, we take, both men and women, slightly different, but we take that innate desire and ability to create something new, and we can channel it into our community. We can channel it into self-development, or we can channel it into whatever, X-rated website you like. So don't waste it, is what I'm saying. And that is another biohacking technique that's as important as psychedelics. And that's why when you read Heavily Meditated, I talk about all the different pathways to reach these altered states of reprogramming yourself. And you don't have to do psychedelics. You might go down a tantric path or a conscious kink path, or these are just somatic awareness. How do I feel my body fully paths? And these are thousands of year old practices. Or maybe it's breath work or meditation or neurofeedback or specific sounds. And all of these are valuable. And in the West, we've kind of fetishized meditation, which has great value. I've meditated for a long time. It's just meditation at the right time or with the right assistance can be far more effective. If I can meditate for 1 minute or for 10 hours with exactly the same benefits, I'm going to choose the 1 minute. So Heavily Meditated is how do you become heavily meditated without spending your whole life meditating? Because that's kind of a waste of time.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Live Beyond the Norms podcast. Make sure to subscribe and follow. Also, make sure not to be that guy, the guy sharing this podcast with people who are not interested in living beyond the norms. If you would like to learn more about the ESS60 molecule, the molecule responsible for the single longest longevity experimental result on mammals in history, a full 90% extension of life, visit myvitalc.com. That's myvitalc as in carbon.com.